All right, I think we're live. So, welcome everyone to another live stream here. Hope you're having a good weekend and a good Sunday here. And so, I'm happy to be back with you after a crazy week of travel. I just was on the Toyota Prius Prime event and Corolla Cross Hybrid and also the Mazda CX-90 event. So, it's been a very busy week. Happy to be back home here. And anyway, as far as the live stream here, this week I'm only going to go for an hour because I have somewhere I need to be after this. So, I'm not able to be here as long as I usually am. But hopefully we'll still have a great conversation here, have lots of good questions answered. And yeah, like all the other live streams, I do always give priority answering to anyone who does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as all the members here with their special badges. Those people will get priority answering. Otherwise, though, I'll try and get to as many questions as I can here. And yeah, anyway, I see we already had some people that were waiting here. So huge thanks to all of you who were waiting. And so good to see you guys, Dom and MD and Truck and Car Guy. Thanks for joining. And Jay, I appreciate you coming as well here. Let me see. First question is from Omar here. Says, do you think there will be a Capstone Grand Highlander? Thanks for joining also, Omar. It's always great seeing you every week. So Capstone Grand Highlander, I don't think, at least not initially. I can't remember what they're calling the top trim. I covered that in my walk around video, but what we were filming there was the top trim whenever they first, revealed it. So, yeah, as far as beyond that, Toyota is very good about trims and responding to, demands in the market. So if, people are saying, well, I want a more expensive, more loaded Grand Highlander, I mean, from my recollection, it's been a couple of months since I've seen the Grand Highlander, but from my recollection, it's pretty much got all the top features. I mean, I guess you could put, nicer leather in it and a couple other things, but I think they basically have everything you're expecting in that segment already. Aside from the couple of things that only the Hyundai Palisade does, like heated third row and massaging seat, I guess, but that's probably it. Otherwise, I think the Grand Highlander is going to match pretty well on features. Anyway, also Luke, thank you so much for the first super chat here. So he says, I'm excited to see what this new Tacoma will be. Yeah, I'm excited too. So yeah, it's interesting they did that Instagram teaser that I talked about this week because I'm not sure. Sorry, my watch is going off here. I'm not sure. Let me see, make sure I'm still good here. All right. Sometimes when I mess with my watch, it messes with my phone, which is what I'm using for the video here. Tacoma teaser. So I'm not sure what to make of that one. I am inclined to believe that could potentially just be like an announcement teaser, like they're going to announce it or do some type of like that's when the campaign's going to start, possibly for like teasers leading up to a reveal. Potentially, it could be a full reveal though as well. I'm not sure, but I can't say too much because I just will say that I have not seen anything. And so I'm not sure. I'm completely in the dark on Tacoma, so I don't know what the deal is. So we will all find out together. It'll be interesting to see what ends up coming out here on, the 4th, whenever that was supposedly what was being teased. So we'll have to see. Also, Rafael, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, I made it this time. Hate that I missed last week. I wanted to have a drink to the Camaro. Yeah, well, thanks for joining, and no worries about missing last week. I know, especially as we get into the warmer months here, there's other things for people to be doing, on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning, depending where you're at, especially when the weather's nice. So, and I am considering possibly not doing these every single week once we get into the warmer months, but just because, I'm expecting the viewership to drop as people, have other things they want to enjoy outside. So we'll see, but it just is going to come down to, I guess, how many people, are joining us here every week still. But thanks so much for joining, Rafael. I really appreciate the super chat. And let me see here. So Truck and Car Guy says, how about that new V12 Lambo? Interesting name. Yeah, it is an interesting name for sure. Not a slam dunk like Aventador was, I don't think. But I think I like the name. The only thing is though, so, and I didn't mention this in my weekly update because I actually hadn't heard exhaust clips of it yet. But I finally watched the like little teaser video or whatever for whenever the Revuelto, I think is how you're supposed to say it, whenever it first came out. And the exhaust sounds just like an Aventador SV, which I don't know, maybe I'm weird, but Lamborghini's V12 for the Aventador, basically anything after the Murcielago, that new engine had like a weird sound that almost sounded like a digital V12, if that makes sense. Like the V12 and the Aventador to me sounded like if like on Forza they tried to like generate their own V12 sound. I could be completely like the only one who thinks like this, but I didn't think the V12 sounded as good as the Ferrari V12s, and I was really hoping. They said it's a brand new engine, it's got a higher red line, all these things. I'm like, okay, sweet. Hopefully we're starting from square one with the sound, and this will sound different than the Aventador because I love everything else about it. And then heard the exhaust clips, and I really hope they're just using exhaust clips from the Aventador and they don't have the exhaust finalized or something yet, because if that is the final exhaust, is what we heard in that little intro video, then I'm disappointed because it sounds just like the Aventador, and to me, the Ferrari V12 still sound way better. And I don't know, like that V12 not sounding as good as it should is like, not like I have the money or anything, but like that would be a deal killer. Even if I like won the lottery, I think I probably wouldn't get one of those Lambos with that V12 just because it's not a good sounding V12 to me. It's okay, and it's something you could live with. Again, these are hilarious, 0.1% of the population problems, but it's just, I don't know. To me, was kind of a bummer when I heard that. I'm like, oh man, I was hoping it would sound better, but I'll be curious to see. I'm going to see in the comments here if any of you chimed in. Nothing sounds as good as a V10, says Raphael. Yeah, I don't know though. I mean, that Ferrari V12 still is my favorite engine sound, I think, of all time. And MD says, personally, I'm kind of disappointed with that new Ruelta. To me, it looks too much like a bloated Huracan. I was kind of hoping it would be a little more distinctive. Yeah, that is part of it. I think it looks really good though. I was pleasantly surprised with the looks. Like I mentioned in the weekly update, I think it looks better than the patent images suggested. But I think Aventador was it was a larger leap from Murcielago. Like it was a larger change. And obviously Murcielago was a huge jump from the Diablo. So, it just, this time it was tough. I think it also was tough with how many special editions they do, between the Diablo and the Murcielago, or in between the Murcielago and the Aventador. I mean, they had the Reventon, but that was it, for that. So it kind of like Reventon kind of primed you for the Aventador, but I mean, a Reventon looks really different than an Aventador. So I think this time, they had the Cyan, they had the Centenario, and they had all these like millions of special editions to kind of prime you. And, they kind of did bridge the gap a little bit, especially like the Cyan and the Centenario in some ways, kind of bridged the gap over to that. And so I think that they just shared so much that, it doesn't look totally fresh. If they would have like quit messing with the Aventador, 5 years ago and then came out with this, and there was no such thing as a Cyan, Centenario or something, I think it would have felt like a larger leap at that point. But I totally get that complaint. I'm totally understanding that for sure. And, yeah, Tom says, it revs at 9,500 RPM, which is amazing, amazing, amazing. So I love everything else about it. And maybe if you put an aftermarket exhaust on it, it'll sound better. But I've even heard some aftermarket exhaust on the Aventador, and it's still like it can't ditch that like digital glitchy sound to the V12, in my opinion. But anyway, other things here. Get some other questions. I don't want to skip over anything. Let me see. So Jay says, what do you think about GM ditching Apple CarPlay and Android Auto for a built-in system developed with Google for future EVs? I'm going to just wait and see if it was a poorly done April Fool's joke. Because I really hope on Monday they're like, just kidding, either because they had planned it to be an April Fool's thing or because the blowback was so bad already that they played off as an April Fool's thing. Because I'm considering doing a rant video on that. I mean, I could do the rant here, but I want to answer questions and I don't want to go on here for an hour about that. But that is ridiculous. If they are truly getting rid of CarPlay and Android Auto, it immediately puts them at the bottom of many people's shopping list. The amount, and the data is there, the amount of people that they insist in their new car that they have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is like, that is one of the top requested features. So you get rid of that, then you better have some really, really, really good products that are so unique and are so lust-worthy that people are going to be okay getting rid of the smartphone thing. So maybe stuff like CT5e Blackwing with a manual. No one else offers that. So, those enthusiasts will probably be like, I can live without Apple CarPlay. Hummer EV, I guess no one else really does anything quite that crazy. Maybe a few people would overlook it and something like that. But for mainstream stuff, like that puts you right at the bottom of the list. I don't care how nice the vehicle is. If you can't, use smartphone integration, I don't care how good their built-in thing is. Their built-in thing's not going to have all of your preloaded apps automatically the second that you sync it up. It's not going to work as good. They never work as good as just the actual smartphone thing. You would think these car companies would have learned over the past 20 years that you can't beat the smartphones at their own game. You can't beat tech companies at their own game. So, I thought that the companies, especially GM and stuff, were headed in the right direction. GM was one of the first to adopt CarPlay back in like 2016. They're going in the right direction, being like, you know what, like, let's just outsource this because we don't do well at it anyway. And then now GM, for some reason, got this idea in their head that they can do smartphone integration better than the smartphone companies. I know there's some other, stuff legally and privacy wise that's playing into that, but it doesn't matter. Consumers don't care about that stuff. Consumers just want what they want. And it's just going to really hurt GM if they stick with that, I think. But anyway, I'll move off that and save the rest for a rant video if that turns out to not be recanted by GM. But Jose, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, do you think the 6th gen Camaro ZL1 would go up in value? I think so, but it's also been around for several years, so they're not super, super rare. But I think any of that stuff, it depends on how long of a timeline you're talking. But all these things from the past 10 years in this golden era of muscle that we've been in, they're all going to be, this is going to be the top dollar Barrett Jackson cars in 50 years, just like, the stuff from the 60s is now. I truly believe that. So, I think anything that's, V8 powered is going to have some appeal as we go towards the electric future and stuff. So yeah, I think 100% that'll go up in value. And thank you so much for the super chat, Jose, and for joining us here today. Luis, also thank you so much for a super chat. He says, just want to say I love the content and can't wait to see what's next for the channel. Camaro LT1 with RS package or base RS or base SS. Well, thank you so much for the kind words there. As far as Camaro LT1 with the RS or a base SS, I haven't been in an LT1. I've been begging and pleading with Chevy ever since that came out. They did no marketing for that. There's been none in the press fleet, at least none in my press fleets. I can get stuff for GM from the New York press fleet and the DC press fleet. Neither of them has ever had a Camaro. The second that the LT1 dropped, I was like, I want to review one. Someone get me into one, and there haven't been anything. I should have just gone and reviewed one at a dealership, but I'm always so busy with just everything else that going to dealerships is a little bit of a tough challenge for me these days. But so I honestly have no clue what the difference is between a base SS and an LT1 with the RS package. So unfortunately, I cannot give you any good advice there about my preferences or what would be best for you. Yeah. I'm sure both of them, these days, most base vehicles even come pretty well equipped. It's also going to come down to how much you value the niceties and the luxuries and, the differences between those two packages as far as, which one's going to be the best choice for you. But I think any Camaro purchase these days is a good purchase, honestly. And so, yeah, thank you so much for the super chat. And hopefully that helps you at least a little bit. But sorry, I'm not more help there. All right. Other questions here. And let me see. So JK says the new Lambo looks like the new Corvette. I think it looks a lot better than the new Corvette, personally. I don't know. C8 really doesn't do much for me still, styling wise. I mean, it looks cool in the front, but the back end still is just not doing it for me on the Corvettes for any of them. But yeah, but I think I've heard some other people do that comparison as well. So you're not alone or anything. And let me see here. So thank you so much for joining the live stream here. So he says, how was San Francisco? Should have let you review my T100. That would be awesome. It'd been a great review. Unfortunately, I was way too busy in San Francisco to do anything. It was wild. So here's a little fun behind the scenes thing. So for that trip, so I did that one Wednesday to Friday. My flight got delayed on Wednesday. And if you remember, as you saw that I posted a little behind the scenes thing about that on Wednesday. But, so I was stuck in San Diego waiting for a plane for a little bit there. Finally got made it to San Francisco just in time for the dinner with Mazda on that Wednesday night. And then it was just so exhausted, but I just basically had to work on the weekly update for that, for this weekend. So I ended up being so busy that on Thursday, I just had finished the entirety of filming the CX-90. And then I had to come back, and I'd already typed up the weekly update, but I hadn't filmed it yet. So after I had to go to the Mazda dinner because I was so tight on time, I didn't have any time after I filmed the CX-90. I had to go straight to the dinner, and talked with everyone, did my rounds and stuff, and then finally went up to my hotel room, filmed the weekly update, but then the editing takes so long in those videos that I was up till 1:30 in the morning Thursday night to finish the weekly update for Friday, because whenever you're traveling, Friday I flew home, you can't count on hotspot, connection. You can't count on Wi-Fi to be decent anywhere. So I had to get it done before I left for the airport, and they were picking me up for my flight home at 4:30 in the morning. So I basically got a little less than 3 hours of sleep that night just because I had to get that weekly update done. And so it was a wild time, because I always do early flights because I want to be home by dinner so I can at least have dinner with my family here. And so whenever it's the West Coast stuff, that means waking up super early. So I usually try and get to bed nice and early, but because I was so busy with everything else this week, I just wasn't able to work ahead on the weekly update. So that was wild. So I was even hoping, if I had a few minutes to spare, I could even take the Mazda up and retrace the bullet chase route in San Francisco there, because I was literally in San Francisco. I would love to do the bullet chase route again, but I haven't done that in a long, long time. So I was hoping to do that. Didn't even have time for that. Didn't have time to film anything, hang out with anybody or anything. So it's always like insanely busy for these things. You guys see the highlight reel, but it is a whirlwind behind the scenes a lot of times to make all these videos happen and get everything filmed I needed to film. So all right, and let me see here. Steve says, you may have already addressed this, but I was wondering what happened to the automotive group you were with, were in with Alex on Autos, Redline Reviews, Engineering Explained, and a few other auto reviewers. So yeah, the AVA, the Automotive Video Association, that just kind of languished. It kind of got killed off from COVID, and we, stopped doing our yearly things, in 2020. And then we never really restarted those things. Partially because when we formed that, that was like 5 or so years ago, when car companies were still not valuing YouTubers very much. Still, I mean, some were better than others, and they were all improving. But at that point in time, it was like we had to band together to like try and help each other out so we could get on more of these things. But recently, I mean, it's really, the focus has definitely shifted towards content creators in the past 5 years. So that group in general isn't quite as necessary. We've been talking about, we'd like to do some more, events as well in the future. It's just tough these days because we're all so much busier than we even were 5 years ago, and trying to get us all in one place the same weekend and also get all these cars scheduled. It's just a little more challenging than it used to be. It's something that we'd still like to do someday. But for me personally, like, I don't do a ton of comparison videos. So like that would be nice to, have a bunch of cars all grouped together and do more collabs with everyone while everyone's just there hanging out and we're not quite as busy. But it hasn't happened since COVID, and we'll see. It may come back or it may not. I have no clue. And I haven't talked with any of those guys about that group, honestly, it's been probably at least over a year since we've even discussed it. So not sure on the status of that, but it's something I'm certainly open to still. And Carlos says, hi Matt, how's everything going? Going well. Like I said, just a whirlwind here this week. He said, finally got my 86 and I love it. I'm still in the breaking in period, but power is great. I've noticed the car doesn't like going slow. Yeah, they're a little clunky at low speeds too sometimes, but I'm glad you got it. Glad you're enjoying it so far. And break-in period is tough in those, but at least with this generation, you have some torque. The break-in period on the BRZ, 10 years ago or whatever, was brutal, because I mean that thing you did, go slow, and it had like very little torque. So I mean it was okay, but I mean even I had to be kind of careful about merging on the highway in this first 1,000 miles because I had to give myself plenty of space there. So yeah, but I'm glad you're enjoying it, and yeah, I hope it continues to treat you well. But Luco, thank you so much for another super chat here. He says, do you think that slow cars by today's standards like the Honda HR-V would have been adequate 15 or so years ago? Definitely. I mean, everything has gotten so much faster just even in the past 10 years. And I think this is something that some of the safety groups are even bringing up about how cars are just so much more powerful these days, and how that is probably one of the things that has been contributing to the rise in traffic deaths, because cars have gotten safer. They're much, much safer, but yet deaths in cars still keep going up. And part of that, I think, is because of the higher speeds. We have higher speed limits and things like that as well, which I love. But, I think just the cars being faster whenever, us enthusiasts, obviously an HR-V that's, slow or something is very manageable. But for some people, if you've never driven something with even 200 horsepower before, it kind of lures you into this false confidence. If you don't have the training, I mean, anything obviously can get out of control depending on, the circumstances and your skills. But, I think 100% that's the one thing that's really changed is cars have gotten so much faster, and we're really spoiled as enthusiasts, but it just means everyone's going faster and having a lot more power than they used to. But yeah, stuff like HRV, I mean, most of the stuff that's slow these days was totally adequate. And if you go back further than 15 years or so, I mean, even like, the only few things that are even remotely close to the performance of before was like the Nissan Versa, which still only has like 109 horsepower or something. But most stuff, I mean, it was like, you look at stuff from the 80s, the 90s, it was like, 130, 150 horsepower, even like, mid to late 90s, 150 horsepower is like the sporty, like, impressive one. And now 150 horsepower, like, yeah, the HRV has more than that. And people are like, wow, what a dog, So, I mean, it's, it's wild how things have improved. Obviously, cars back then were a lot lighter, so it took less power to, have an exciting car, but still, I mean, those 0 to 60s for those sporty cars back then still was not, doesn't even compare to a modern day RAV4, it's just wild. So it's funny how, things have changed, and we'll see another huge leap here, it seems, with all these electric vehicles, all of them being so much faster for even the average versions. You have a Chevy Bolt doing a 7 seconds 0 to 60, and like that's really quick, for a lot of people. So it's just one of those things you got to keep in mind whenever you're not talking about enthusiasts. Which is an interesting thing to think about there. And Raphael says, my entire house and garage are Alexa. I get it in the car and use Android Auto. Getting rid of that in CarPlay would be a big mistake. Yeah, I think so too. MD says, I believe these fun cars, muscle cars, and well-praised cars are going to hold their value because of what the industry is heading toward. Yeah, 100%. And Two says he's joking around about his T100. I bet that's a cool truck though. I'd love to try one of those someday. And let me see. Carlos says, what did you drive, or did you drive the Prius Prime for this media event, or was that in another media drive? No, Prius Prime was for the one this week, along with Corolla Cross Hybrid. And so, yeah, I can't talk about them yet, but those videos will be coming here early next week as well. So, yeah, just to prepare all you guys, it's just all because of the embargoes. Usually I do like 2 reviews a week, but this week, so tonight at 12:01 a.m. Eastern time, Hyundai Ioniq 6 review drops, and then the Mazda CX-90 is at 8 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow morning. So there's gonna be all kinds of stuff. So I apologize if I'm killing everyone's sub feeds with a million videos. And then Tuesday, thankfully, there's a break. But then Wednesday's Prius Prime that comes out on Wednesday afternoon, and then Corolla Cross Hybrid is Thursday afternoon. So that's going to be the rundown there for this week. It's going to be a lot of videos. Yeah, hopefully that goes okay. We'll see. Usually I try and avoid that because it just kills the views, but hopefully the interest in all those vehicles is high enough that doesn't kill too many of them. But I feel like by the time we get to Thursday with a Corolla Cross Hybrid, which is probably the least exciting out of all 4 of those, I'm sure people are going to be tapped out on car reviews for that week. But and I think also people are telling me for other, I can't remember what other vehicles, but there's also other embargoes dropping because this next week is also the New York Auto Show. I don't know why anyone even had an embargo for this week for a review, because I feel like the New York Auto Show is going to be one of the main things. But there's that stuff. I think also there's 1 or 2 other reviews on cars that I wasn't on the events for that are also dropping this week. So if you are someone who doesn't like missing anything, make sure you make plenty of time in your schedule for the reviews this week. There's gonna be a ton of them from all of us reviewers. You'll see them all drop at the same time. We're all going to be dropping them at the embargo times, and it's going to be a lot. So anyway, Carlos, thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships. I really appreciate that, and congrats to those of you that scooped those up. I think 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we got 1 more out there. So if someone doesn't have gifting turned on, you want a membership, you can go ahead and grab that. Thanks to Carlos's generosity. Thank you so much for that, Carlos. I really appreciate that. And hopefully all you new members enjoy the membership experience here. I'm going to be, I'll be trying to do some more behind the scenes stuff this week. Let's see. And I'm going to have some changes to the schedule. So that's one of the things when you remember is you see the schedule for what's coming up for the next, month or so. And there's going to be some changes here. I still have to get a few things ironed out, but some stuff's getting shuffled around potentially as far as what I'm going to be reviewing here for the next couple of months. So stay tuned for that, members. But let me get back to the other questions here. Getting back, MD says he couldn't do all that and get 3 hours of sleep. Yeah, that was tough. It's been a while. I don't think I've pulled an all-nighter since college, but 3 hours of sleep is, I think, the least amount of sleep I've gotten in a night. And yeah, probably probably at least several years. It was not fun. Lots of coffee and feeling delirious, but I got it done. And the trucking car guy says he travels for work, so he knows that struggle. Yeah, it's the least glamorous part of all that. All right, so let me see here. Marco says, "What's up, Matt? How's it going? Are you a one-man show, or do you have people working for you at some capacity? I don't know how you manage a growing channel." Yeah, it's me as a one-man crew. That is it, Marco. So it is a lot, and that is that is one thing I'm so jealous of people who have editors. And I was even like talking, Sophion has an editor, and we were hanging out. We were even on the same flight from San Diego to San Francisco this week. And it's so nice. Those guys, they can film their video, and then they just ship it off to their editor, and then they can go about their day and have a nice rest of their day. And that's the dream for me. I don't mind filming, but like the dream for me is just like showing up, driving, and talking, and letting everyone else handle everything else. Because I really don't enjoy editing anymore, and I don't even really enjoy setting up the camera and all that stuff. It's just not great. But yeah, one-man show for me. The channel never got big enough where I could afford to hire an editor. So it's just my predicament, and hopefully someday it'll grow. But for now, I'm definitely a one-man show. And the trucking car guy, thank you so much also for gifting 5 more memberships. I really appreciate that. So yeah, make sure you guys have your gifting turned on here. You guys are so generous with these memberships. I really appreciate it. And so I think there's still 3 out there. If anyone isn't a member, this is also a great way if you want to try being a member. Just join for the live stream here, because you guys are so generous. We're gonna basically everyone that's in the live stream is gonna be a member here pretty soon. So I really appreciate that generosity. It's so nice of you guys. And Goth Rocker, thank you so much also for a super chat here. He says, at the Mazda CX-90 event, did you hear anything from Mazda management about their new inline 6 all-wheel drive sedan? Well, I don't think this was a confidential thing, and this isn't anything under the embargo either. So I can tell you, as far as a Mazda 6, because I brought it up, Sophion brought it up, a bunch of us, every time we were with, an engineer or a product planner person or anything, we were like, oh, I'd love to see this motor and this platform and something else. And, obviously, like, we were all suggesting that clearly they didn't build this entire brand new platform, entire brand new engine and transmission just for the CX-90. Obviously, it's going to trickle down. Nothing has been officially confirmed, but a CX-70 is almost certainly going to be coming later this year. That might have actually been confirmed, or maybe just articles are just talking about it like it's been confirmed. I don't know. But beyond that, what I heard from multiple Mazda employees about whenever we bring up the Mazda 6, they're like, get people to buy sedans again. They're like, they all said, we would love to do this. And they even mentioned like this whole platform originally was kind of, they were thinking about, obviously it was going to go into the CX-90 as well, but, I think they were wanting this to be, a sedan too. But from what they have said, the way they were talking about it, at least, they're just like, whenever people buy sedans again, we will be, that'll be something that we will look into. But they said no one buys sedans. So again, I don't want to speak for them, and nothing is official, but, I would just say don't expect a new Mazda 6 unless sedan sales improve. And so that means that this platform, unfortunately, again, unless they find some way to justify the money part of it for, these other vehicles, I wouldn't expect anything else with this platform and this engine aside from those 2 SUVs for now and for the foreseeable future until buying interests change. And one of the Mazda engineers, though, they did say they believe, like, they think that sedans will eventually make a comeback, just because, they're saying with how aerodynamics are so important these days on vehicles, and you're seeing all these jelly bean shaped things, from like Hyundai and Mercedes. If you are going to have a range war about, who's going to have the most range and get the most efficient, amount of range out of a battery pack, I mean, the batteries are going to improve as well, and that will help, but like, it's still going to come down to the aerodynamics, and you're going to see all these future vehicles are going to be heavily influenced by aerodynamics more so than ever before. And what's the better thing for aerodynamics, sedans or SUVs? Obviously sedans. So they seem to think there's a future there. Now, again, would it get this platform, or would that be in the electric future when they're doing some kind of electric sedan? I don't know. So, but the way they made it seem, it was like, the second that people are willing to buy something like this, then they will, be looking into it. So, That's, I guess, kind of the bad news is for anyone who was hoping that maybe they had something waiting in the wings or something. It doesn't sound like it from what I collected. Again, I could be totally off. I don't know, but just with my conversations with them, that's the consensus is that there is no Mazda 6 coming until people start buying sedans. So it's kind of tough because I guess the only way that we would send that signal to them is if you bought a competitor to the Mazda, or I guess if everyone started buying Mazda 3s a bunch, maybe. But yeah, doesn't sound like a Mazda 6 is in the cards, unfortunately, which is a bummer. Kyle, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, let's get Matt enough memberships to get him an editor. I appreciate that. But, it really comes down to my performance on the channel, too. I mean, you guys are so generous and so kind with the support. But, it really, the channel needs to be at the point where it's, doing better, to justify that as well. And hopefully, that's something that happens someday. And I'm really trying to improve the channel and make some improvements and changes the way I edit, the way I film, and the way I format the videos. And so and even just the stuff I do, I think I'm doing a lot more embargoed stuff, a lot more of these trips. I don't love doing more trips, but I think that is one mistake I made is I turned down a lot of trips in the past. That is one kind of, edge that I guess I have that not every channel out there can do. And so I think leaning into those things that I can do that others can't, I think is one of the things that I have to really focus on. And I'm hoping that those things, change the tide of the channel. And one day I can, have as many subscribers and as many views as, the larger channels that do the editors. And hopefully that gets to that point. But I was close, like 2018, whenever I was like peaking with my views, I was really close to considering it and getting there. And then the channel just kind of started to decline at that point and hasn't come back since. So we'll see what happens. But I really appreciate the support, Kyle, and thank you so much for the super chat there. Let me see some other member questions here. I know we got a bunch here that have come in. So let me see. Trucking car guy saying his Magnum's got 200 to 250 horsepower, and even that's pretty quick for a wagon. That's awesome. You have a Magnum. I don't think that was brought up in past live streams, but that is such a cool car. I'd love to review one of those someday too. Those are so cool. Hopefully you're enjoying that still. And Two Track Jacks is also talking about earlier with cars getting faster, about how distractions inside the car have also grown massively as well. Very, very true. And so that's another problem. And I think that's why some companies are really pushing back on the all screen thing, because they're like, look, this is way too distracting. And like, I think Hyundai said they're not going to go 100%, all screen until they actually are at a nearly autonomous level. And then they'll feel more comfortable, putting all that stuff in. And then, Carlos says, got a lot of videos this week. Yeah, keep you guys entertained. Anyone who gets bored or wishes I had more content, this week is going to be the week for you, because I'm going to have way more content than usual. Copper says, when's the CX-90 supposed to be at dealers? I think I saw there's another question here from a non-member I wasn't able to answer, but I think someone said that they were seeing them show up at dealers. I don't know if I'm at liberty to say until the embargo drops. But I can say very, very, very soon. The build configurator is already on there. And so I'll be discussing that in tomorrow's video, bright and early tomorrow morning. So I'll be able to answer that for you there. I just don't want to accidentally say the wrong or say something too soon on here in case that is under the embargo, because I'm not 100% sure. Let me see the other questions. Keep losing my place. All right. So another member here says Focus ST 4th gen in Europe since 2017 with 2.3 EcoBoost and ELSD seems vastly improved versus the 3rd gen we had here with the 2.0T and open diff. I'm sure it's better in most of the ways. It's such a bummer that we never got the new ST and that Ford just gave up on sedans and cars in general here in the States. Because the Fiesta sounded great with that new turbo 3-cylinder and those new Fiestas, which are also going away. Focus and Fiesta are going to be a thing of the past in Europe here as well. It's just Ford's going bold. We'll see if it pays off, but it's unfortunate. All that stuff went away. Zachary says, "Hey Matt, my sister just recently got a 2021 Hyundai Tucson Sport for $24,000 with 26,000 miles on it. It has a lot of features and the full LED headlights. Yeah, those are great. That's a solid buy, and really, really nice vehicles still, even though it's not the brand new style. That I mean, they still sold tons of those Tucsons because they're just a really nice vehicle, and people like them a lot. So congrats to her, and hopefully it continues to treat her well. And thanks for joining us here on the live stream, Zachary. Steven says, good morning, Matt. Would you recommend anyone to buy a Kia Rio because you can get like an S of tech package for 20 grand? It seems like a nice little commuter with everything you need. I've never driven the Rio, so I can't really chime in on it. I thought the Rio was on its way out. If it isn't already gone, it should be very soon. Because unless you're not talking about the US market, but I'm pretty sure you are. So, I think my go-to pick in that, if you're looking for something under 20 grand, brand new, I really like the Nissan Versa. Like, it's got a CVT, but it was a fun little car. I reviewed it and I was actually pleasantly surprised. I was like, you know what? Like, for someone who just, it's not even like just basic transportation. Like, I genuinely actually enjoyed driving the new Nissan Versa a few years back. Like, good little car. I don't know about the Rio if it's, just as much fun or not, but I think that's kind of a nice little commuter if you're looking for something cheap, and they get great fuel economy. And yeah, solid little cars. I just, it's such a shame everyone wants to sit up high in an SUV these days, because otherwise, I mean, there's so many good little cars still out there. And I think the Versa is one that just does not get enough credit here in the States for how good of a little car that is. Raphael says you need a second child. 3 hours of sleep is a nightly goal. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna join that club. I think we might be one and done here potentially. It's and everyone always says, once you have another kid, like, we've been pretty lucky with our daughter. She's, pretty easy, not too bad. But a lot of people are like, oh, just wait for the second one. And I'm like, maybe we'll go while we're ahead, and we won't take that risk. Yeah, but no, I'm sure it's just, a lot more love and a lot more fun too with more kids. But yeah, that's, man, 3 hours of sleep is a nightly goal. I don't think I could function if I only had 3 hours of sleep every night. I would be delirious and I couldn't see straight probably after a few days. But respect to you for, if that's your situation and you're doing it, then that is, you're a stronger person than I am. That's for sure. And Jay says OPEC announced that they will cut 1 million barrels a day beginning May to December. High gasoline prices coming soon, and people will move to EVs and hybrids sooner. Which, this could be a whole nother rant, but like, if they actually, like, they're shooting themselves in the foot, like just really screwing themselves with these production cuts, because what do you think? Yeah, like you said, everyone's going to go to EVs and hybrids sooner. Like, do they want to get rid of gas stuff sooner? Like, I would assume that OPEC is going to hurt from, I mean, yeah, you make your bucks, and maybe they're just like cashing in, and they're going to price gouge everyone while they can and just go out in a blaze of glory and just kill themselves 5 years sooner because of all this crap. But like, if you're trying to encourage people to like resist the EV stuff and stick to gas guzzlers and burn as much gas as you can, then you would think that they would want to make it affordable, or at least try and find that equilibrium where it's like, it's a little pricey, but people will pay it. And, I think last year kind of worked because everyone was kind of in this craze because they're like, I can finally get out of the house. I don't have to worry about COVID really as much, at that point. So I feel like people kind of paid it last year because they were so desperate to get back to normal. This year, I feel like everyone's already like used to like normal now again. And I think there might be some people, especially after all the inflation of the past, 6 to 9 months here. If you then, turn up the wick on gas prices, you make that, more expensive too. There's no way. There is no way that people are going to go for that. And I guarantee you miles traveled will go down this summer if that really does get cranked up. And yeah, you're right. And OPEC deserves every single person that ditches gas for this greed and this price gouging, and all these gas companies too, making record profits. Like, it's one thing if like, the supply is down, so we have to, cut back, and, gas is more expensive because it's really hard to get. But then you shouldn't have record profits if that's the case. So record profits to me means there is a padding there that doesn't need to be there. You're not this like, we're trying to help out the people. It's just clear corporate greed, but even worse than normal corporate greed, which is really hideous in a time like this where, and again, inflation's crazy. We have wars in Europe and stuff. Like, this is not the time to be, padding your wallets. And so that is, I didn't hear about that, but that just outrages me. And that will screw them, and they will have it coming, and I will have, not like I would have any sympathy for them anyway, but I would have no sympathy for them. And yeah, they deserve to have everyone never burn gas again with the greed that they have going on. All right. Other questions here. Dylan says, what do you think about the Raptor R? I think the Raptor R sounds great on paper. I was supposed to get one as a press vehicle. Actually, I was supposed to have it this week, but then someone wrecked it bad. Like I think it's totaled. So previous one of these other loans, a lot of these press vehicles do get wrecked or at least damaged from time to time. But the Raptor R apparently got wrecked pretty bad, and so I now have to wait for Ford to either decide to send another Raptor into the fleet whenever they're maxed out and sold out, which means I probably will never review a Raptor R, or maybe I'll get lucky and there'll be another one that shows up, or they'll find some way to repair the mangled one that maybe won't be totaled, but I'm pretty sure it sounded like it was a pretty bad wreck for that one. So and let me see here. So I did see Tu Cheng used his special sticker there. He's been a member for 10 months. Thank you so much for being a member for so long, Tu. I really appreciate that. And I also see someone, Mark also said, did anyone get hurt with that wreck? From what I hear, no. I'm not going to say who it is, but I did just find out this week who it was that wrecked it. But it sounds like everyone's okay. I mean, you're in a Raptor R, so you're going to have to really screw up to hurt yourself in a Raptor R. But no, from what I heard, everything's okay. Just the vehicle is badly bruised and beaten. So yeah, it's one of those things. Whenever you have these vehicles that are more extreme with their capabilities, people want to test those capabilities, and that's when you get into trouble. So it is what it is. But Sean says, did you hear about a GR Prius from Toyota? They never talk about future product of these things. We all try or we hint something and, we all just laugh about it. And, it's one of those things that it's just everyone knows you can't get that out of them. They're not allowed to talk about that stuff. Yeah, there was the rumor a while back, but nothing official from Toyota. And, there was no hints given or anything like that. But, from what I heard, I mean, it sounds like if the Prius really is super hot and then sells really well, like it seems like it's going to, and they're going for the sporty thing with the Prius, then I think that a GR Prius could be a logical next step. Personally, we'll see what happens and see how things change. We have new management now and all that. So we'll just have to wait and see. So let me see other questions here. About Mike saying they should make it hatchback style like the A7, A5 that would help with sales. I think you're talking about the Mazda 6 thing we were talking about earlier. Sorry, I'm so behind on comments here. But yeah, it would help, but I mean, look at the A7. That doesn't sell great. The Volkswagen Arteon doesn't sell great. I mean, with the Audi, it's a luxury thing, so that makes sense. But the Arteon, isn't really luxury, so that didn't really help out the Arteon at all. So, they need to see like legitimate sales, not like a little bit of hope. Like I think they need to like see everything come roaring back in. But Hyundai's doing their part. I mean, that new Sonata is hot. So if I think Hyundai may actually help make Mazda's business case, because if Hyundai really turns sales around on the Sonata and everyone, goes into that thing in droves, then maybe that can make them be like, okay, well, if we do something really sick, like with that awesome new platform and Mazda's gorgeous styling, and they can price it competitively still with the others and make it, basically a 3 Series or a 5 Series for Sonata money or Sonata loaded money, something like that, then yeah, they'd have a really solid value there. And you'll hear me talk about the value in the CX-90 and the pricing. The pricing's already out there. You can go on Mazda's site, but I mean, I'll save my discussion for that because I'm behind on comments here. But yeah, Mazda's they're doing some really good stuff as far as how they're positioning stuff and pricing stuff, in my opinion, currently. Yeah, Goth Rocker says he doesn't think sedans will ever come back. We'll just have to wait and see. Copper says, will there be a CX-5 sized one on that platform? Would that be the CX-70? No, CX-70, from my understanding, again, unofficially, but I think it's basically going to be the CX-60 that is over in Europe. So shorter version of the CX-90, basically. I think it's supposed to be a little wider for the 70 compared to the 60, but basically what you see on the 60 is what you're going to get essentially with the CX-70. CX-5 sized one, I don't think they're going to go there because they just came out with the CX-50, and they're not going to do a CX-60, I don't think. So I here in the States. So I think that's just, they're going to leave it at that. CX-50 is going to be for people who want the next generation thing that's CX-5 sized. And then, you have the CX-70 as the next step up. So there's that. Let me see. Tu says, I think someone should play off of the old Simpson EV joke. Hi, I'm an electric car. I don't go very fast or very far. And then the fast EV flies by. That would be fun to do for sure. And Yavinder, thanks for joining. Says, hey Matt, do you think the Lexus RCF is worth the MSRP tag? No, unless I mean, it's one of those things of everything is worth different amounts to different people depending on your preferences and how you feel about certain things. I personally do not think the performance and the luxury is up to its price tag. No. But if you want a V8 that's going to be super reliable and never let you down and not kill you on maintenance like other, brands V8s that are non-American, I guess, the European V8s and stuff like that are going to be a lot, more trouble, most likely long term. Also, RCF is more rare than like an M4. So if you're looking collectible, potentially the MSRP could then make sense if you're going to keep it for 30 years and, try and flip it on Bring a Trailer in 30 years or whatever, then yeah, maybe something like that. But as far as the new market and what you can get for that price tag these days from other companies and current performance, no, I don't think it is worth the MSRP, unfortunately. So the good news is, though, they haven't changed much in the past few years. So you can get a good deal on a used one, then you get all the same perks of a brand new MSRP one, but you are saving a good bit of money, and they do hold their value well, which is one thing you can't say for some of the others. So again, another perk, I guess, of the Lexus, but I still think you're probably just better off going with a used one. And since they last so long and they're so solid, it's not as much of a risk as it is with some of the other stuff too. Linda says, just stopping by to say hi. I love the blooper reel with you and Beth, which is the member exclusive video I posted this week. She says, I'll be pulling for you to figure out what works for you. I really appreciate that, Linda. And thanks so much for stopping by. I very much appreciate that. And thanks so much for being a member as well. Okay, I see I missed a super chat here from the truck and car guy. Sorry to keep you waiting. He says, hey, Matt, I'm willing to let you review my Magnum and 5-speed Lancer if I can find the time to make it to you. Yeah, well, I totally get it. If you're traveling all the time too, and I'm not sure where you're at. If you want to send me an email sometime, and we can kind of discuss it and figure out if something makes sense. Because I'm also not opposed to traveling or meeting halfway or something. To save both of us some time. So we'll have to see. But thank you so much also for the super chat, and thank you for offering your vehicles as well. I'd love to review both if we can, find some way to make it happen. And just I really appreciate the support too. Let me see here. Other questions. So, we have Jajuk, I think. I don't know how to pronounce the username. I apologize. It says, Elantra NDCT versus S550 EcoBoost Mustang Automatic. Motor trend figure 8 laps were pretty close at 24.9 seconds versus 25 seconds, respectively. Price and equipment seems similar. Front-wheel drive with ELSD versus rear-wheel drive with track lock. So as far as, if you're trying to decide between the two and which one's best for you, obviously they have very different personalities. So, as far as figure 8 lap times, like, yes, handling wise, they will do the same G and, roughly the same time, those types of things. And like you said, they have kind of, similar equipment as far as just different ends providing the power, but you'll have the locking diffs there. It's really a toss up. Again, it really comes down to, do you appreciate rear-wheel drive driving dynamics? Do you need front-wheel drive to handle snow or something? Or are you okay driving rear-wheel drive with snow tires in the winter? All that kind of stuff is going to kind of influence that. I will tell you, though, the DCT in the Elantra N is miles sportier than the Mustang Automatic. The Mustang Auto, the 10-speed, at least whenever it first came out in 2018, I haven't driven one since, but at least back then it was not responsive. The manual shifts were all over the place. The 10-speed was weird with its behavior. It's a fine cruiser transmission. It's a fine drag racing transmission, things like that. But if you want to manually shift it, honestly, even if you leave it in automatic mode, I don't think it's the best experience personally. So if you're going automatic Mustang, I would actually say if you want a good automatic experience, just go for the Elantra N. That's probably the easy answer to this question. But also, like I said, it'll come down to, do you like the rear-wheel drive thing and just the differences between those. They deliver their power and they're fun in very different ways. They are both, I would say, close to being equally fun. I'd say maybe the Elantra N's a tiny bit more fun just from a giggle standpoint as far as the exhaust being a little crazier in the Elantra N, but then the EcoBoost has more power. So I'd say they're a toss-up. It comes down to personal preference as far as which wheels you want to have driven. But if you're really interested in a good manual or a good automated manual experience with paddle shifters and stuff, DCT and the Elantra N is definitely the way to go there. Zachary says, hey Matt, morning. Okay, you asked the question again. Sorry, I already answered it the one time, and sorry it took me so long to answer it. Carla says we have 2 CX-90s for display models at my dealer. Okay, so there's the answer about, so they are showing up at dealers at least as displays. They are for test drives and display models, but are not for sale until we get more in. Good to know. So there you go for the person who asked that previously. Thanks for chiming in, Carlos. And so yeah, I'm glad that people are going to be able to actually test drive those too, because that's a really smart idea. So many of these other car companies, like they're just expecting people to just blindly buy them without test driving. And I think that all right, I can't get into driving impressions till tomorrow on the CX-90. So we will discuss it next week. But yeah, that's I will. Driving the CX-90 is certainly something I think that is important to do for anyone that is considering it. And so you can take that however you like. All right, so let me see here. MD says that's an insanely great price for a 19 Tucson Sport. So goodbye there for your sister, Zachary. Congrats to her. Carlos says, Matt, my 86 has the GR exhaust on it. It's great. It backfires every time you downshift. Wow, that's cool. I'm excited to hear that. It was a nice surprise on the way home from Richmond. Wow. All right. Well, that gets me even more excited for some future drives, hopefully in that. Let me see here. I think, make sure Beth texted me that I missed the super chat, but I think I'm all caught up. If someone did, if you guys can bring it to my attention, if I did miss a super chat, I don't want to miss any for sure if I did, but I think. Oh, okay. I see there's one that came up here from Jonathan Snow. Gotcha. Okay. Sorry, Jonathan, for making you wait there. I said, he said, do you think Acura will make a TLX Type S advanced like the MDX? The current Type S doesn't offer head-up display, 360 cam, heated rear seats, etc. That's a good question. I don't know. I haven't heard anything. Knowing what I know about Acura and the way they do things, I would assume that they either don't think they can justify a more expensive TLX Type S with all that stuff that would end up being, $5,000 more expensive or whatever, or maybe some of the stuff is packaging, because I don't think there's a head-up display in any regular TLXs, if my memory serves me right. So, it could be like they can't fit the head-up display projector there in the dash the way it's set up. 360 cam, that could be something. I guess they could probably implement that. There's nothing really stopping them there. Same thing with the heated rear seats. So I don't know. It's possible. I mean, I wouldn't expect things like the massaging seats out of the MDX or anything like that, because that's just something I think would take a lot more work, and you can't bolt in the MDX seats because it's just going to be too big, obviously, in the TLX. But I don't know if they'll do something like that. I guess it'll come down to how well the regular Type S sells, and if they hear really for a lot of these things, and it's kind of tough. But I guess even if you're not buying these things, if you just go to your dealer and say, hey, I'm pre-approved, or not even pre-approved because you don't want to go through all that. But if you say like, hey, look, I seriously would buy TLX Type S if it had these things on it, like you tell that to the dealer will pass that feedback along to the manufacturer. At least they're supposed to, that they'll pass it on to their dealer reps and be like, oh, like I lost out on a sale last month because it doesn't have a head-up display. Like, what the heck, Acura? And then that's how that stuff works its way up the food chain. Then, if they get enough of those people grumbling about that, then they're like, oh, okay, well, is this something that we see a lot of demand for? They do some market research about it. If that supports that idea, then they go for it and, spend the money to do that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the way to affect change as far as, in the car industry and what you want to see in a vehicle. It's all about, the dollars really. And just that dealer demand. It really is funny how many of them really truly still go off of what dealers say, like not like you would think they'd also, obviously there's people who just talk online. Maybe if you go to a dealer, that means you're more serious because you're willing to put up with a dealership interaction in order to, get your point across. But, I think they also, some other car companies do have like a hotline or like, a chat thing where you can be like, oh, like I'd like to request this or something. And maybe they pass that kind of stuff along to that way. But yeah, that's, I don't think it's going to come anytime soon though, at least from what I've heard. But thank you so much also for the super chat there. And Yavinder says, I heard GM's trying to ditch Apple CarPlay. What are your thoughts on that? I did just already mention that. And since I'm on a tighter time frame today, for those of you who didn't join right in the beginning there, I'm only going to be able to go for an hour today because I have somewhere to be after this. So I'm not going to get into that rant. I think it's a horrible idea if it's not an April Fool's joke. And I may do a rant video about that at a later date, because that's just another case where it seems like GM is just allergic to making money. Same thing, like they have a supercharged V8 on the parts shelf and they won't put it in the Silverado. even though, and they're just happy to miss this whole craze with these super trucks and supercharged V8s, and Chevy's just like, oh, that's nice. They're just happy to watch from the shore while the boat just sails on by. I don't get it. There's some really mind-boggling things that GM does, and that seems like, unfortunately, it doesn't shock me as much coming from GM, sadly, but it just still is just completely insane to me that that's something that we've been thinking about. MD says, we're talking about the Tucson here again. Yeah, I'm just so behind on these comments. I'm so happy so many of you are joining. This is awesome. Dylan says, did you know that ventilated seats actually help regulate body temp during long car rides and prevents overheating? Yeah, I think that's one of the really nice things. I mean, I know for me, when I get hot in a car, sometimes it really helps to, cool me off. Even some of them do it better than others. There's some where it gets like really cold super fast, and others where it's a little more of a mild sensation, but I think they're all really nice to have. I love having ventilated seats. It's one of those things, though, if you've never had ventilated seats in a car before, just be careful, because any of these luxury features you add on, once you have them, you never want to give them up, and then you're stuck buying top trims of everything for the rest of your life, because it's like, man, I don't want to go without this or that because I had it in my last car and it was so nice. So if you're someone who's never experienced those types of things, just like, don't even go there unless you're okay spending, top money for the top trims for the rest of your life, because all these companies love, reserving most of that stuff for these super high trims. All right, other questions here. Yeah, I see Omar keeps asking his question a bunch here. So as far as Omar, you're asking about the Grand Highlander. I'll talk more about the Grand Highlander whenever I do my review on it here in a couple of months. And I'll have a full in-depth video on that as far as all my thoughts on the Grand Highlander. Marco says, yeah, Omar needs an answer. So hopefully that answers quickly here. So I can get caught up on everything else. MD says, sounds like someone lost their press vehicle privileges for the Raptor R wreck. No, they haven't. And, sometimes with the wrecks, it's not always, not like it's not their fault, but for like the Raptor R, like they expect people to go off road in the Raptor R, and so it's one of those things. Like, yes, they obviously don't like that it was wrecked, but at the same rate, they probably were expecting someone to do it sooner or later. And also it comes down to how large of a channel you are, and also how stupid you were being when you wrecked it. If it was an honest accident, then that's handled a little differently than if you're someone who's just being an idiot, or someone who's, not a huge channel. Obviously, some of these larger channels can get away with stuff a lot more. I mean, the countless amount of cars that I've heard of large print publications just destroying and having no repercussions because they're enormous publications. There's just, you get different treatment depending on your audience size. Unfortunately, it's just, the way that goes. But, Marcus says, but now I know who it was. Are you surprised? Yeah, I think I am, because it's not, it wasn't like someone who's just an idiot. Like, so I don't know the full details of it, but no, I was surprised that, because, it wasn't someone being an idiot, I don't think. So Zachary says, my mom's 2015 Kia Sorento has almost 160,000 miles on it. It's still going strong. Still surprisingly has a factory warranty on it. Interestingly, did she get an extended warranty or something to go beyond the 100,000 miles? That's awesome that it's still going great. And it's refreshing to hear a positive story about a Kia, because it seems like a lot of people are just always complaining about the reliability. But the reality is that Hyundai and Kia would be out of business if everyone was, getting warranty claims on their vehicles, and, just they would be drowning in warranty claims if it was actually as terrible as everyone makes it out to seem. All right. And Marcus says he choose the Stinger GT over the Arteon, but yeah, getting back to the hatchback thing for a Mazda sedan, same thing. Stinger didn't last very long. I mean, they sold, marginally, but it was not a good selling vehicle or anything. So it's just another one where that seems like that hatchback idea. It's a really good idea, but it doesn't seem to help any cars stick around, unfortunately. And Zachary says, I was watching a guy on YouTube who doesn't do mechanical work, and he had a 2010 Camaro with only 1,013 miles on it, and wow, got a long way to go. That's impressive. That sounds like they just like take it out like once a month to the store or something, and that's it. That is crazy. That'll be a hot car and bring a trailer in 10 or 20 years, I'm sure. All right, and Let me see other questions here. Losing my place again. Every once in a while, like YouTube will just randomly like load it and go straight to the bottom for some reason. So and yeah, Zachary says, okay, same question there. Simple and Yummy says, would you put the Grand Highlight? You're asking Omar's question. Yeah, so I appreciate you guys trying to stop with the spamming there. Yeah, in the future, I'll try and get to questions as best I can. For those of you who aren't members, I apologize, but I gotta prioritize the members and respect their contribution here. Two says a scenario: if you had a chance to own a trinity of cars, but only from one religion, U.S., Asia, Euro, what region? Not religion. Sorry, misread that. Which region would you choose, and what would be the trilogy of cars? Ooh, that's a hard question. That's a good question though too. I think it's probably the Subaru fan in me. As far as a trio, I'd probably go Asia, and I'd probably do like an R34 GTR, and then if like a 4-door, I'd probably do one of the like very rare versions of the WRX STI or something like that. And for the third one, I'd probably do like an S2000 or something like that potentially. Although if we're talking like money's no object, I guess I could also just go for Europe and then just go Ferrari Purosangue, Ferrari GTS, or Ferrari, Lusso. What is it? Ferrari Super Fat, the 812 GTS. That's it. 812 GTS. Woo, is the convertible 812. I do one of those. I do a Purosangue. And then I'd probably, if we're doing all of Europe and you be a little bit looser with that, then I'd probably do like a Bentley Continental Flying Spur or something for like a practical car, whenever I didn't want to have the Purosangue or something. I'd probably be like the dream team there if it wasn't for the Asian ones. All right. Omar says, best racing game you've played? That's a good question. I'm kind of sentimental for the old one, so I think that's kind of some of my favorites. But let me see. Oh, I see. I'm already at an hour. It flies by every time I'm doing these. So like I mentioned earlier, I do need to be somewhere, unfortunately, so I can't get caught up on all the questions this week. I apologize. Next week I will be back for another 2-hour one. Next week though, I am going to do it on Saturday since Sunday is Easter, just to give you guys a heads up. And I really apologize. I always usually answer everyone's member questions here, but unfortunately I just don't have the time today. I have somewhere I have to be. I can't get out of it. I need to go. So I apologize, but I do have to. But man, that flew by. That hour always flies by when you're having a good time. It's always great hanging out with you guys. Thank you so much for joining here for this hour. I apologize again. If any of you do have questions that didn't get answered, please do feel free to send me a message on Facebook. That's usually where I do get caught up on messages. I'm behind on messages there too from this crazy busy week, but I will answer your question at some point. If you want to hear my answer to your question, please send me a message. I always want to answer everyone's questions. So anyway, thank you all so much. Hopefully you guys can all join next week as well on Saturday, and we can talk more then. I'll answer everyone's questions there next week for a nice long 2-hour live stream. But anyway, thank you all very much for watching and joining. Have a good rest of your Sunday and have a great week as well. Stay tuned for all those reviews this week too. Lots of good stuff to watch. And yeah, thank you all very much once again. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.